Mm. What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Comic Outlaw, and we will be reviewing Jedi's and foreign fighting. Yes, yes. So stay tuned and feel the force with us. What up, everyone? Thought I'd do a little memorabilia right there. I am the Comic Outlaw, with always Magnus, and we've been doing a Star Wars series thus far.
Yeah. I mean, who doesn't like themselves some Star Wars?
Yes, well, it's a mixed bag nowadays, but we talked about that in the last show, and we're going to be talking about something a little more basic.
Mm-hmm.
We went over certain force powers, and now we're going to talk about Jedi fighting styles.
I mean, are they going to learn karate, taekwondo? What are we talking about here?
Well, the Jedi, besides having certain fighting skills
Mm-hmm.
and abilities, actually have several different lightsaber forms and fighting techniques that they've evolved over the years.
Okay, so then they're going to use something a little more like this.
Indeed. Something
Nice.
exactly like that.
All right, pretty cool.
Yep. And we're going to review certain fighting styles, certain pluses, weaknesses, certain Jedi's and other Sith that may have used it, and we're masters at certain forms. And of
All right.
course, we can't cover everyone. If you watch our show, so if there's someone that we missed, feel free to hit us up in the comments, and we'll cover it another time.
Yeah.
If anyone's watching, watch our show, like and subscribe.
And I guess before talking about lightsabers and how to properly utilize them, I guess could mention that they used to originally use swords, and it's during the period of them going from actual metal swords to lightsabers that they started creating these fighting styles.
Well, yes, they actually had swords, and they would enchant them
Mhm.
to a point. They used lightsabers, and the lightsabers in the beginning were very primitive. They had a pack with sort of a cable right here, so that's how the first fighting style actually evolved.
Yeah.
I believe it was called Shin Cho.
Yes.
And forgive me, I'm not Asian. I mean no disrespect to anyone out there. So forgive my pronunciation. I'm not perfect.
Well,
I'm
I
just a
mean,
humble yellow lantern.
the Jedi are sort of based off of the samurai and the way of the Bushido and honor, and so a lot of the names are derived, or at least are Japanese sounding in nature.
Yes.
And so then Shicho is the first fighting style, and what would that comprise of?
Basically, it's your basic fighting style on one-on-one combat. When it was like the first time fighting style to evolve, so it evolved more from swordplay. These very primitive lightsabers, we had a very limited space
Yeah,
cut.
because they had the cables that would attach to the
Yes.
power packs, so they couldn't do like these wide swings because they could cut their own cables, they could
Mhm.
get entangled.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this form was more for unpredictability. It involved a certain amount of passion too, which certain Jedi argue later on that if you did it too much, you would fall more into the Sith
Well,
direction.
isn't as much passion as it's more about restraint, but it's like over restraint, correct?
Well, they say that Jedi masters that practice this have to have a certain amount of restraint.
Yeah, because it's they're trying to first off, number one, not kill the opponent. Second of all, actually try not injuring them. It's more like disarming them or disabling them.
Yes, it's more of a passive way. Yes, it involves combat, but it also involves disarming an opponent,
Mhm.
taking an opponent out swiftly, quickly.
Taking out their weapon, so then if you have a weapon and they no longer do, then they're less likely to want to fight.
Yes. Something like what Batman does, where he takes out the dude's weapon right away and they're looking
Yeah.
at it. It was made basically for disarmament. It was more of a peacekeeping thing. It had a host of initial weaknesses, including one-on-one combat when it came to lightsabers.
Yeah, it was better for multiple opponents.
Yes, groups, stuff like that, and it had the shock value of surprise. Sin Show is also one of those ones they actually practice with the younglings. So it was actually one of the first forms that you learn as a Jedi.
It makes sense. Sticking to the fundamentals, this is where all begins with the beginning of your training.
Yes. So that's why you see it in Phantom Menace and as well later on in Episode 4, New Hope, because Obi-Wan started him on a very basic way of fighting.
So if it's for the younglings, you wouldn't really see Jedi Masters using it, or would they?
Actually, there was a few masters. What was his name? Fisto?
Kit Fisto?
Kid Fisto,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, the green guy with the tentacle hair.
Just if you guys watch Clone Wars, he's the guy that swims underwater with a big smile on his face.
I believe Darth Sidious kills him like a punk.
Yes, because the weaknesses of Form 1. Because it wasn't built for one-on-one combat. It was very clunky in that sense.
Well, and with a Sith's intent of murder, trying to not hurt your opponent, and your opponent trying to murder you.
Well, let's not forget the element of surprise.
Yes.
Nobody was expecting Sidious to go, ah!
Yeah.
Just start having his way with everyone.
Because he, right off the bat, killed 3 Jedi, was it? Or was it
Yes.
4?
3.
3.
I think it was 3. That was the hubris of the Jedi. That was another problem with the Jedi.
I mean, who's going to worry about an old man whipping out a lightsaber?
Well, even though Fisto was able to hold his own against people like Grievous, so the form does work.
Yeah.
It does have certain strengths and certain weaknesses to it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's not particularly one of my favorites. I understand it for a trainer.
Yeah. And, well, I guess the main problem is it doesn't have enough strength. Since it is fundamentals, you keep being to basics, and, there's the reasons to basics, because they're tried and true, and they work, but they don't specialize enough in it, I think.
Well, and it also focuses more on surprise with the Force, too, so certain masters will fall back at it when they want to do an unexpected move.
Yeah.
Or something like that. That's what they say, but I think it's just due to a master's influence or just plain luck.
And if you wanted to go into more specialized techniques, what would the second fighting style be?
Mukashi, I think.
Mukashi?
Mukashi, yes.
Yeah.
This one was more of a one-on-one duelist type,
Mm-hmm.
like what you would consider fencing or dueling. It was made specifically to kill other lightsaber wielders.
Okay, and since you're saying it's more like fencing, is it more agile?
Yes, it's agile. It has a sense of grace, and there's more precision in it. Like they try to use their power moves as mistakes. They let them miss, and they'll take a quick swing at them or something like that. It's more graceful, and it's not like Form 4 where they dance around, where they flip around a lot. It's more like Zorro, that kind of fighting style. Where they move, or Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Where it's like clean, 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 clean. Most of these masters can get in quickly and know how to take out certain opponents. Dooku was a practitioner of this.
Yeah.
Big time. That's why he was able to take on Obi-Wan and Anakin at certain points, even though his age had deteriorated him.
And I can absolutely see that, because he had a very side profile stance when fighting, and he'll do these quick things, and he'll keep on sidestepping and
also the
around.
curved blade too gave him an advantage when he was using that because it gave him more of a thrust.
Yeah.
Because in certain sword play, you can swing a bastard sword, and it does a certain amount of damage. Fighting with a bastard sword and fighting with a rapier are two different things.
Mm-hmm.
And Dooku was more eloquent in his style.
Yeah.
What the problem is with Mukashi is that he's weak to
multiple opponents, correct.
Multiple and blunt attacks like Form 5. Anakin's form was more hard press attacks and strikes, and it takes away from the grace.
Going with the really heavy swings.
But then again, we have to consider Dooku's age.
Yeah.
Which people really don't take that into account when Anakin was facing him.
Yeah.
Which really bothers me about the whole situation with Anakin. I think Dooku doesn't get enough credit in certain ways.
Yeah.
I mean, he was long in the tooth.
Yeah. Well, also, who knows how much he was keeping up with his training at that time, because he was busy orchestrating a war.
He was, but he wasn't.
Yeah.
I don't know. But even then, certain training doesn't leave a Jedi, and if you watch the cartoons, he had a significant amount of combat through the whole time.
Yeah.
It's just that he couldn't fight time. Anakin had just gotten stronger and just simply overpowered him.
Yeah.
Like I said, they tend to rely more on force moves too as backup to make up for the lack of knowledge when it comes to blaster fire or things like that.
Yeah.
They rely heavily on mixing force moves, force shields especially, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Let's see.
And you were talking about blaster fire. I believe the next form, Form 3, is actually pretty good against blaster fire.
Sorisu, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Sorisu, yeah.
Yeah.
It is pure. It's how can I explain? It's sort of pure defense.
Yeah.
It came out of like blasters being invented, because once blasters came into the game, everyone could blast a Jedi.
Yeah.
And where Chicho or Sicho,
The first form?
yes, where it kind of taught you how to block blasters. This one was perfection in blocking blasters. It made you into a living shield. It was pure defense. You were able to use defense as well as offense. It's often like a kind of like an opposite of Form 5. Form 5 is a lot of aggression.
Yeah.
Sorisu is a lot of defense.
Yeah.
Let an opponent make a mistake and then taking advantage of it.
And I think Form 3 is kind of a fan favorite because Obi-Wan favored it, right?
Well, Obi-Wan was Form 4 at one point. I think that was Ataru. But later on, after Qui-Gon got killed, he adopted more of a Form 3. He adopted Sorisu, and he became a master. Actually, Yoda said that he was a living embodiment of what Sorisu was.
All right.
Because of Obi-Wan's personality. Obi-Wan, like if you watch the cartoons, he would get his hands dirty.
Mm-hmm.
But if he could, he would outsmart an opponent. He would let someone surrender.
Yeah.
If there was a way that he could avoid it without bloodshed, Obi-Wan was totally down for that.
Yeah.
So Obi-Wan was the embodiment of Sorisu. But it did have weaknesses. Their offensive moves were often predictable.
Mm-hmm.
There's a master in every form.
Yeah.
Okay? So there's always exceptions to the rules, because I know someone's going to say that. Masters exist in every form. That's why they're masters, and that's why they're able to fight, and they're able to do good. So I know people are going to be like, oh, what about this? Or, there's masters in every form, kids.
Yeah.
But everybody dies. Flat out for it. But Obi-Wan was a true master in this. Another person that did Sorisu, believe it or not, was Darth Bane's apprentice.
Mm-hmm.
Zorana, I think. Zorantha? Zorana, yeah. She had a double-bladed lightsaber. Her Form 3 was defensive yet aggressive at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not only Jedi that employ these different methods. The Sith often use the same thing. They're interconnected.
Yeah.
It's not just a Jedi's form of fighting. Because Bane actually recommends Sorisu for her because he takes her as an apprentice as a little girl.
Mm-hmm.
So she could learn how to defend herself, because she was more of a sorceress.
Yeah.
In the dark side. Yes, there's sorcery in the Force. Don't believe me.
Are you telling me space magic has sorcery? That's ridiculous.
I know, huh?
But what I've always kind of wanted to see with this form is like two masters at it, where it's like, okay, go, and just have somebody shoot a blaster at them, and they just kind of do ping pong with one blaster bolt with each other to train.
Oh my god, that would take forever.
No, but at like actual training though, or like actually have like just a bunch of them, and like kind of like playing hot potato, but with a blaster bolt hitting it to each other.
Okay, like we were talking about like the movies, and I love the Clone War cartoons because that's my Anakin. I really don't like the Anakin that's in the movies so much.
But that Anakin doesn't like sand. We can relate to that.
You can relate to that.
But it gets everywhere. It's so coarse.
Like the fighting scenes, for example. Like usually, action movies, like when they do a fighting scene, like good action movies, there's a little bit of exposition.
Mm-hmm.
Like they'll talk a little bit or they'll explain a little bit of what's going on.
Yeah.
Very
Dragon Ball Z-ish.
Well, not just Dragon Ball Z, dude. Commando and Arnold Schwarzenegger, where the guy gives up the goods, where his daughter is, or there's always something or some kind of meaning in a good action movie, where they like give some They Live, where Roddy Piper fights that dude. He's trying to get him to put on the sunglasses so he can see the corruption in the world. And it's a fight scene, but he's trying to do it for his own good. So it does something for the story. Now, granted, Obi-Wan and Anakin had a nice, long, 20-minute fight, but it really didn't explain anything what was going on. They really didn't talk. They weren't really in exposition. And true, I love them twirling their lightsabers, but it was such a waste of an opportunity. Besides, I have the high ground, which was one of the stupidest ways for Anakin to get crippled.
I mean, you could also kind of think of him having the moral high ground also.
Did he now?
I mean, maybe.
I don't know. The Jedi and having the moral high ground is...
Of course, stealing children from their mothers to train them to be super soldiers is having the moral high ground. I mean, you're teaching them the first forms of fundamentals on how to cut people in half. No.
Oh, and then they tell them, don't worry about your mother and father. They're no longer important. Love is no important. There is no emotion.
I mean, are you telling me there's no passion?
Oh, well, that's the Jedi's opinion. Sith Lord.
So, next form 4, Ataru?
Yes, Ataru.
That's pretty much watching Phantom Menace. There's Ataru.
Yes. And actually Yoda fighting in part 2, Attack of the Clones.
And he fought in part 3 as well.
Yoda was an Ataru master.
Yeah, it's the jumping around, doing flips. It's
remember
a very cinematic way to fight.
You were talking. You asked me like if you could use the Force to integrate in your body and your physical skills. Mm-hmm. Ataru is sort of the mastery of that.
Yeah,
there's a lot of tricks, a lot of jumping. Like there was an old movie, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Yeah,
you seen that one?
Yeah, old movie. I think some people would be offended by that.
Well, be offended or not.
It's Jackie been a Chan number of years.
Drunken Master. I can sit here and name a bunch of different movies where the fighting style was the same, where it had... Actually, it was very popular. How was that racist?
I didn't say racist.
Well,
just some people would be offended. Just like...
Why?
I don't know, because they don't want to feel old.
Well, hell with them. Star Wars came out in 1977, y'all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it's actually called a type of kung fu movie. I know there's like gun fu, but it's called something specific.
John Woo developed gun fu.
Yeah, but it's not.
But it's a lot of floating, jumping. Like jumping around, flips. You basically use the Force to make you stronger, to up your body strength. Your physical abilities. Where you do flips, move around. You try to catch your opponent off balance.
Yeah. With
different acrobatic tricks. Qui-Gon used this, as did Yoda. Specifically, you can actually see Yoda do it in the Clone Wars cartoons when he takes on the entire army. Mm-hmm. True Masters were able to use it for a lot longer. Although, when you were done, just like Super Saiyan or anything else, it did take a toll on your body.
Yeah, because you're using so much force power in addition to your physical power, having them work in tandem to do all of these, high-flying combat.
Then, yes, and then depending on what it is, it would burn you out.
Yeah.
True Master could last a long time, but other Jedi would have to fall back on different forms.
Yeah.
To kind of balance it out. So there would be a mix between that and other fighting styles.
Yeah.
Like I said, Yoda was a protectioner of it. I really can't think of... There's probably a few other people, but Yoda is the main one that always sprouts to mind.
Yeah.
Qui-Gon, of course.
And I feel like, especially earlier on, when a lot of Jedis had the luxury of training without having to worry about, is the Empire or Sith going to hunt me down, that they all trained probably just a little bit in it, like having the Force work with them in their fighting, even though they didn't specialize with it.
Well, it actually depends, because you had people that did that, but, perfect example, the Royal Guard. Okay, they had like a guard. They're supposed to be like guardians from Sith, and they were supposed to be like the warriors in case the Sith ever came. But the problem was they hadn't came in thousands of years, so it was just all practice from books.
Yeah,
and that's what happened with the Jedi in a lot of ways. They sort of de-evolved.
Yeah.
I love this quote in Boondock Saints 2 when they say that peace is the enemy of memory.
Yeah.
And that really degraded the Jedi skills. I think war made them harder, but it was just too late at that point.
Yeah.
Was there anything else you'd like to add about 4 and 4?
No, that was pretty comprehensive. We talked about the Masters, what it involves, the good, the bad.
Well, we could move on to 4 and 5.
Yeah, it's Jim Show?
Jimso.
Jim Show, so you don't pronounce the
Jimso.
D.
Yeah, it's weird. It's really weird. It's more of an aggressive attacking form. It's a lot harder. Um, it's basically for people that are more power reliant,
Mm-hmm.
such as Anakin, Darth
Darth,
Bane,
well, Darth Revan's apprentice, he did that a lot, right?
Malik. Yes,
Malik. And he
yes,
was a big, muscular dude.
Malik. Yes, was a beast.
Mhm.
But 4 and 5 was also about aggressive and using aggression at the same time.
Yeah, it's a very Sith tactic more often than not.
Yes, the problem that it has is in certain forms of defense, it tends to run out. Vader had to actually go back to Sarisu in some ways. He had to do a mix between 5 and 3 to kind of cover his chest plate.
Okay, yeah.
And but he had very powerful strikes, very sudden strikes, and like this one's sort of like Kempo. Kempo's a martial arts form where in Kempo every block is a strike
Mhm.
or potential strike.
Yeah.
So in 4 and 5, they always looked at it like every block was a potential strike or a cut.
Yeah.
You could take the opportunity to hit.
Yeah.
You're familiar with Kempo?
I believe it is an offshoot of karate, is it not? Kempo karate?
It is and it isn't. It has some of the same principles, but it's based on fluid motion.
Yeah.
One hit, one strike. One block turns into a punch, turns into another punch, turns into a... And this is the way that form works.
Yeah.
It builds on itself. It builds on momentum. I hate to harp back on this, but even though it didn't have no exposition, and I complained about it earlier, the best example of 4 and 3 and 4 and 5 in combat is Anakin versus Obi-Wan,
Mm-hmm.
where you see Anakin's aggression, with 4 and 5, and Obi-Wan's just a complete master of Sarisu.
Yeah.
So, and plus they knew each other. But Anakin's style was more aggressive. It was more forward. Like, you would use the Force, but almost as a second, like, kind of thought, more in pushes or...
Yeah, when they were using the Force, it was more of a Form 4 to jump around. And not even at each other, but more defensive.
Well, Vader would do that later on.
Mhm.
But he would do it sparingly.
Yeah.
More of a surprise move.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, you can't be a... Don't take what we're saying all the way to heart, because Jedis did dabble in other fighting styles. Obi-Wan dabbled in Form 4, and he dabbled also in Form, I think 5, to kind of becoming a royal balanced person.
It's actually pretty rare for Jedi or Sith to do just one, but I think examples would be Kit Fisto, where he just did one, and then Darth Malik, where he just did 5, right?
Yes.
But they were few and far between. A lot of them did.
Well, Dooku was a
2.
specialty in Form 2.
Yeah.
So there were Jedis but true ones knew how to adapt.
Yeah.
A true master knew when to adapt.
Mhm.
I think Yoda relied on Form 4 because he was in a position where he had no choice. His body was aged.
Yeah. Well, also, he's just so small, he needs to be able to get into people's...
and that he's
get
smaller,
past
it
their
allows
defenses.
him to dodge and move faster too.
Yeah.
So it does work out for smaller Jedi. It really depends. Like, a lot of the best Jedis or Sith kind of adapted more than one technique
Yeah.
to survive, or they had other abilities.
Yeah.
Like we talked about Xanon or Dark Side Sorcery.
And a lot of times that they would have one form, and then the second form that they would have, it would either synergize with it because it's so similar, or synergize with it because it's the opposite. And so either they can bolster what they already do, or they can cover their bases by doing what they can't do and just switch both of them.
It depends on how good the Jedi was to adapt.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
And being able to seamlessly switch between fighting styles.
Yes, because not every Jedi on the Council was the greatest swordsman in the world.
Yeah.
Otherwise we'd still have members on the Jedi Council that would still be here.
That could actually go pretty good into the next one, Neiman. That it's considered the diplomat fighting style or the counselor fighting style.
Yes. It's what they refer to as a jack of all trades.
It's a very vague fighting style.
Yes, and often people that an interesting fact is a lot of people that actually Jedi usually have blue lightsabers that practice this.
Yeah.
Because we'll get into colors another time. That's another show. But blue is mostly like an all rounder. It like the reason they call it diplomats. You do a little bit of this, you do a little bit of that. They mix different fighting styles, and it's supposed to be what the Jedi consider the perfect form for the Jedi. Although it has an intrinsic amount of flaws.
Yeah.
You know, like being an all rounder is good, but having no specialties in anything does tend to flub you up when you're coming against a superior master.
Yeah.
That has specialties in certain forms. Yeah. Granted, they might not be as good as you in certain things, but they'll be able to overpower you in others.
Yeah, and if anything, would be good as sort of in college where you have a major, but like Neiman would be like a good minor. You know, it just kind of bolsters literally anything else that you would pick.
To study Neiman, you need to learn like 3 different forms before I have an idea of them.
Yeah.
You know, to kind of mix them together. But it really depends on the mix. Like I said, every form has a master. Oddly enough, through the research, Exar Kun was one of the people that often got brought up. He's in the novels. I first read Exar Kun in the novels. Star Wars Legends, just so you guys know.
He used a blue lightsaber too, right?
Double-edged.
Yeah. Well, actually, at first it was just a single, but then was he the one who developed the double edge?
That, I don't know. Like, that gets mixed up. It depends on,
I mean, at the very least, he popularized it.
Yes. Like I said, dude, that gets mixed up. It depends on who you ask. There's the Legends version, and then there's the Disney version. So,
yeah.
And there's every fanboy's version.
And he was a character that was considered to be a specialist, just like how we mentioned a few where they specialized in it and didn't really do anything else.
But he had a more aggressive form of it.
Yeah.
It mixed in Form 5, too. But Exar Kun wasn't too known for his lightsaber skills, more than the Force stuff.
Yeah.
He was in prison. He tried to attack Luke's apprentices later on in the Legends thing. He was actually the most notable one that I could think of. There's been other diplomats.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's hard for them to be notable in fights because, once again, that they're diplomats. They normally wouldn't fight, and it's good for them to be ready for a situation, but not necessarily to best it. Like, hopefully, because they're diplomats, there shouldn't be somebody too far away that can help, or that maybe they could talk their way out,
Well, most Jedis actually believed in peace.
Yeah.
The lightsaber was secondary.
Yeah.
There was a theory, and actually I don't believe this after reading Legends, but I guess it's become more popular now with The Last Jedi, that Luke didn't want to swing his lightsaber, because every time he did it, there was some kind of destruction that was caused from it.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like it's lightsaber that cuts and burns things. How could that cause destruction?
Yeah, but a fire causes destruction, yet life comes from it.
Yes. And as much as pain and destruction is a cause, people can look into the flame and see beauty and warmth.
Well, that's a balance between light and dark.
Yeah.
These I 6 is one of my least favorites.
Yeah.
Because it's so hard to read.
And it's the least concise out of all of them, Each one has a defining feature except for this one because it's a jack of all trades.
I think it's something that Force wielders that have specialties in either precog or pure Force powers go into just to kind of get a basic idea of everything else.
Or if they want to they love shooting lightning from their hands and it's just like, I don't really want to focus on learning how to swing light when I could just have it come from my fingertips.
That's more of Sith.
Yeah.
Jedi weren't like that, remember?
Yeah.
We did talk about that. There was Jedis that did lightning, but it was real weak.
Yeah. And so...
Which, I'm going to make a case right now. I'm just going to state this. Like, everyone, like, Gray is...
Gray is what?
Gray is bullshit. I'm going to tell you right now.
What?
Like, I understand Darth Jedi and understand Sith that kind of lean towards the light and they mix and match powers, but you are never. It is freaking stupid that you're going to have someone that can have Sith powers and not have the flaws.
Yeah.
It's absolutely mind-boggling and dumb to me. Like, even the first Jedi dabbled in certain things here and there, but they weren't like one way or the other.
Yeah.
You know?
And it kind of makes sense for it to be a bullshit, as you say, because, like, in the mentality of a regular person, it's like, well, people aren't light and dark, you know, there's shades and stuff like this, but you gotta remember, the Jedi and Sith, really, they're not people, they're Jedi and Sith. The Jedi are light, and the Sith are dark, and to be able to be the best at it, you have to not be gray. That the Sith have to double down on being dark, and the Jedi, they have to go all in and being light. And if you deviate from that, you're not the best you can be.
Well, I think you could deviate from it. Like, you can have both light and dark.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what Form 7 kind of touches on. Yes, I believe it's called
Jayo?
Jayo.
Juyu?
Jayu, and also Vempad.
I mean, that's true. It has two different names, but there's such an aggressive fighting style of just pretty much... It feels like they're swinging wildly.
No.
No?
Just like Nimon was a jack of all trades, this is more the aggressive version of it.
Mm-hmm.
Where it takes the other forms and it turns into a pure fighting thing where you actually touch with your emotions. Because this form believes, and this is what some Jedi disagree on, but you have emotions in combat. When you see your comrade die, when you see children slaughtered, you know, sometimes you have emotion. And this form allowed you an out. Instead of giving to the dark side, you could channel your dark energy and sort of predict moves from the dark side.
Yeah.
So it was sort of like channeling the dark side in some ways, but not. And a lot of Sith use this one because it relies on passion and emotion. They dive deep into it, but Mace Windu did a form called the Vempad, something like that.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, most people don't know about Mace Windu is the planet that he comes from. Are you familiar with this planet that he comes from?
No.
I don't remember the name, but the planet he comes from, they're natural Force users.
Really?
They're naturally adapted and attuned to the Force.
Do they have, like, Force rocks lying around, and that's why they just kind of absorb it?
Sort of. But, that's good.
Force rocks, it's a thing.
Well, it's more natural on the planet. Like, they're just attuned to the Force, but they're attuned to the dark side of the Force.
Oh, okay.
Because it's a very primitive planet they hunt. They, you know.
That's kind of like Darth Maul's race, where they're kind of naturally attuned to the dark side of the Force, and that's why their skin tints red.
Well, the dark side doesn't... Well, his brother was yellow-skinned.
Yeah.
They had different color. Well, the dark side...
It doesn't always turn red, but yeah.
Doesn't necessarily translate to evil. Like, the lion in the jungle, because he hunts, or the wolf. Let's say the wolf. Do a North American one. A wolf hunts. A wolf eats the rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
A wolf hunts in packs. They kill. Are they evil?
No.
They're following their natural instincts as predators, right?
Yeah.
That would lean towards the dark side because they're fulfilling their hunger.
Mm-hmm. But how would this have Form 7 lead that it's okay for light users?
I was getting around to that. Windu, well, because it was very rare.
Mm-hmm.
Windu was one of the... That's why I gave you a background on Windu. Windu was one of the main factors of it. He actually did that form. And he was able to channel the dark side into his own ability.
Mm-hmm.
And even predict it. But it did have flaws, since Mace Windu's apprentices had a habit of falling to the dark side using this form. Well, and I also believe the reason they fell to the dark side is because they weren't properly trained to handle the dark side.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like giving a 12-year-old a book of matches and telling them not to play with them.
Yeah.
And I think that had they been... Because Mace Windu came up with the dark side essence around him, so he knew how to channel it.
Yeah.
Like I also talked about, I think Anakin should have been trained. Remember we talked about in the last episode?
Yeah.
I do believe how Anakin should be trained by Mace Windu in this form.
Yeah, that Obi-Wan still should have been his master, but should have been trained in Form 7 so that he has a way to focus all the emotions he has into combat.
Yes, and the council disapproved of this. And I do believe this is one of their biggest mistakes.
Yeah. Well, and I feel Obi-Wan would have been up for that because when Qui-Gon died, even though it wasn't Form 7, it was effectively that way what happened with Obi-Wan. He became very emotional. He's like, no! And, he was able to take on Darth Maul when originally the two of them couldn't.
Well, yes, he was using his emotion.
Mm-hmm.
He was channeling his anger, but he was channeling it righteously.
Yes.
Jedi are very odd when it comes to fighting. Like, they're not as honest. And it's funny, I use that with the Sith because people consider Sith as... They're not as honest when it comes to fighting.
Mm-hmm.
Or just... There are reasons for doing it. I think Obi-Wan understood this later on.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons that he managed to keep himself through the Clone Wars. But, well, like I said, he was the true definition of Sarishu.
Yeah.
And this Form 7, Revan actually used it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Revan was one of the people who used it. It was more aggressive, it was more forward, but these were usually people that were not touched by the dark side, but experienced the darkness.
Mm-hmm.
And they were able to channel it and use it. And it's great for the dark side as well. Sith actually uses technique too to like gather energy. Yeah. But it's the opposite of Niman, where Niman has a lot of defense. This one doesn't.
Yeah.
It has weaknesses when it comes to certain defenses and predicting certain moves.
I mean, a lot of times also, does it not have them ignore defense altogether? Like, if they lose control, then they just focus on offense.
Yes, they get carried away.
So it could be like a extreme version of Form 5 then at times.
Perfect example. When Mace Windu was fighting Emperor Palpatine,
mm-hmm.
he had him.
Yeah.
He had him on the ropes.
And he didn't notice that Anakin was just like, he was on the fence of like, helping Mace Windu might be helping Sidious.
But the thing was is that Mace Windu, and I found this interesting, this was actually one part I did like about the movie,
mm-hmm.
is that he felt it was time for him to give a speech,
mm-hmm.
which is such a super villain thing to do. You know,
yeah.
I have him at my mercy. Now I'm going to give him the business.
Yeah.
It is over. And I will finish you. You know, like...
Yeah.
Mace Windu... I think Mace Windu was riding a high tide of the dark side at that point.
Yeah.
I think... Had Mace Windu killed him... I don't know... I think that might have been enough to drive him towards the dark side.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not right away, but I think that would have... Like, drived him into that.
Yeah.
Because I think Mace Windu was at the point where... He was almost at madness.
Mm-hmm.
Because even Anakin... Because originally they were going to bring him to the courts.
Yeah.
And Mace Windu, I think, saw through Sidious' mind, he's like, he owns the courts, he owns this. The only way to do is to kill him.
And well, also, right before that, Sidious killed 3 other Jedi.
Yes, but that's not the Jedi way to kill him.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, like, because people often, I watch the movie with people and they often question that with me. Well, he's a Jedi, he's a good, why are you saying to kill him? Why can't he just bring him to Jedi? Why can't he? Obi-Wan would do that.
Yeah.
I was like, well, because of his fighting for him.
Yeah.
I think Mace Windu got so wrapped up in it, you know, that he got... I think if Anakin wasn't there, he would have just fucking stabbed Sidious, and that would have been it.
Well, would he even have gotten the chance? Because Darth Sidious wanted the situation to arise. Do you think Darth Sidious, if nobody else was looking, would just take Mace Windu out?
It's hard to say.
It seemed like he was really holding back. He's like, "Oh no, you're so strong. I wish there was another strong man."
Yes, like when you're like power, unlimited power. I think he was testing Anakin,
mm-hmm.
but Anakin, like I said, the writing sucks. Like George Lucas is not the best writer. Yeah, well, sand is coarse, and that movie makes my ass itch, just like sand in my butt crack. But this scene is actually pivotal because Anakin goes, "Let's bring him to justice."
Yeah.
Like, because Anakin has his doubts about the Jedi.
Yeah.
Which I think this was a perfect setup. In the cartoons, they do really well playing this. Like, especially in the 5th season, a lot of fucked up things happen with Ahsoka and stuff where Anakin starts to lose faith in the Jedi system.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't just a sudden thing. It's a slow build through 4 and 5, which explains why he's kind of teetering away from the Jedi.
Yeah.
And Anakin's like, well, let's just bring him to the court. Let's bring him to justice. The Jedi way.
Yeah.
Something that Obi-Wan would say.
Yeah.
But instead of saying it like Obi-Wan, he's saying it in desperation for Padme.
Yeah.
But he's trying to be good.
Yeah.
He's trying to, like, do what his master would do, you know? Because Obi-Wan, like, if the dude was at his mercy, he would still spare his life.
Yeah, and that's something you mentioned about him earlier, yeah.
And I think that was Anakin trying to struggle, you know, with the Jedi.
Yeah.
And then when Mace Windu's like, well, I'm just going to kill him, I don't think he believed Sidious up until that point.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then Sidious, well, you know what happened, Anakin. His hand.
Yeah.
Mace Windu's all surprised. Gives him the Force lightning. He flies out the window.
And so, is this it? I believe there's only 7 forms, right?
Well,
no more?
There's another one. There's a few other ones, actually.
No. There's only 7.
Well, that depends on your definition. There's a...
Well, are there 7 traditional ones, I believe they're referred to. So the other ones could be less traditional?
Traditional
in a
way.
modern?
Well, there's one where it's a technique without Jedi powers.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was called Turashi?
Mm-hmm.
Something like that.
I believe the most noteworthy one is actually Darth Maul with that.
Yes, he actually learned how to fight without Jedi powers. It was an idea of Sidious's, where it was a combat that was specifically designed to fight against Jedi. And of course, there's the double-bladed one. What's it called?
Darko? What is it? It's Jarkai. Oh, wow, I was off.
Jarkai. Yes, it's the double-bladed lightsaber. Assad Ventress is famous for using this. It has a lot of weaknesses. It has to be mixed with other stuff. She mixed it with Makashi because of Sidious. The problem is with a double saber attack, if you're a weaker person or if you don't have the body stature, you could be overpowered very quickly by a one-handed lightsaber.
So it would have difficulty with something like Force with Form 5 or 7.
Yes, but if you're like someone like Malik and you're already a beast, it could be very deadly.
Yeah.
Anakin actually practiced this a few times, as did Luke. It's one of those things they fall back on, and they do have training for.
Yeah.
So, like I said, it's really a grab bag of different Force abilities and what they mix in with their combat.
Yeah.
And that pretty much sums it up, I think.
Yeah, but I think Terakashi, you touched on it a little bit, has some interesting aspects that it deals with hand-to-hand martial arts, but also because it doesn't deal as much with, actually at all, with force powers, as much as pure martial prowess to sort of compensate for that. It's not unusual for the user of this fighting style to have a slight resistance to force power, such as force lightning or force push.
And Force mind tricks.
Yeah.
That's a big one. Yeah, like I said, it really depends. Like I said, there's been a lot of different fighting styles over the years. We might have missed a couple due to legends.
Yeah.
So, like I said, if there's anything out there, let us know.
Yeah, and there could always be ones where the two using 2 lightsabers. A lot of times they use one of the regular forms, but they use their own unique techniques because
Ahsoka used 2 lightsabers, but she used Form 5.
Yeah.
So it really depends. Like she used a double blade, but it was more in the form of Form 5, where it was attacking, more aggressive. So like I said, it's a double. Like the forms get mixed a lot.
But then it also depends on the weapon, the user. But like
the Jedi, the training.
The Sith that used, I believe, the light whip instead of light saber.
Yes.
Like, did they legit just use one of the forms, or did they just appropriate that for the use of their weapon?
No, they use different forms too. I mean, it really depends on the weapon. Like I said, the Sith, the
Yeah.
Jedi.
It gets
You know?
complicated.
Yes, especially with so many Jedi and so many Sith over the years. There's been a nice mix between the. So if there's any of your favorites, anything out there, let us know.
Yeah.
Can you think of anything else, Magnus?
Just may the force be with you.
Yes. May the Force be with you. And remember, we're always here, coming to you live and loud. Star Wars Part 2. And we'll catch you on the flip side. We'll be talking about different Jedi, different Sith, and the codes between.
Later.
Laters.